Last call to play. Ladies and gentlemen, we are truly honored that you find the time in this hugely busy schedule of Off-Broadway and Broadway. Thank you very much. My name is Frank Blase, and my company is called Apero Entertainment. We produce this. We are honored to produce a unique play of Peter Danish and Gil Mehmert as a director. You know, they say that the older you get, there are fewer and fewer events where you can say, I'm doing this for the first time. Most of us, okay, it is not loud enough. I speak loud. For most of us, it is the first time in New York City, off-Broadway, 6 minutes away from Times Square. We are humbled, we're excited, and we are nervous like hell. So today's little press conference will be after me, Peter, who explains the play a little bit, Gil, his way of directing, then we play a few scenes, a couple of minutes, and we hope you have questions. And maybe you have the same questions to the director that I had. Why do you cast women? Is it trendy, or what is this about? And I'm also, full disclosure, not in the classical music scene. My little company, Apero Entertainment, specializes on finding and producing original plays. This is our third project with Gil Mehmert. The first two were in Germany. Original play, this is. And Gil sent it to me last year, January. And I said, classical music. Then I read it, and I couldn't lay it on my hand. I kept reading it, and I really liked it. And maybe other people also who are not so in classical music find ways in the play that explain things in a very entertaining way. Having said that, Peter, this is the author, Peter Danish. Please welcome Peter.
This doesn't seem to be on. Good evening. Good morning. My name is Peter Danish, and I am the director of Last Call at the Züchner, Bernstein and Karajan. That was the original name, but that was taken, so we had to change it. So welcome to our Blue Bar. The story has a very interesting genesis. It begins from my own personal passion for baked goods. Okay, my last name is Danish. That being said, about 10 years ago, I was on vacation in Vienna. And when you're in Vienna, you gotta have the soccer torch. So my trip took me to the beautiful Blue Bar, and my reading material for the trip was the Leonard Bernstein collected letters, which had just come out. If you really want to learn what a person's all about, read their letters. Don't read the biographies. Because then you hear them talking to their butcher, you have them talking to the tailor, and you find out what really makes them tick. That being said, I wanted to try the Züchner tour. I've never tried it before. So I walked to the Züchner Hotel, sat down at the Blue Bar, had my cake and coffee. I had my book. The waiter passed by, and he saw the book on the table. And I said, oh, have you read it? And he said, no. But I did wait on Maestro Bernstein many, many times. I said, oh, that's wonderful. He said, yeah, he was much beloved by this hotel. In fact, we recently renamed the presidential suite the Bernstein Suite. I was impressed. I said, well, I'm up to the point now, he's just about to become an honorary citizen of Vienna. He said, I remember that night. I'll tell you a little story that's not in the book. The night before, Maestro Karajan and Maestro Bernstein were both staying at the hotel. We were given direct orders by management to keep them apart from one another. And as luck would have it, they bumped into each other in the lobby just outside the door of the bar. They stepped inside, sat down and chit-chatted for a few minutes together. And I said, oh my goodness, what did they talk about? And he said, I would never listen. Are you kidding? But, and he proceeded to tell me this wonderful story. Now, He also explained he didn't speak a lot of English at the time, so he only got snatches here and there. And I said, where did they sit? He said, right there. So I said, would you mind terribly if I just, moved over here? And he said, sure. So I took my feet and called me to that area. And your writers, I instinctively reached for my laptop. And I sat at the table and said, Leonard, Gilbert, talk to me. And within 2 hours, I had a first draft. Right there in the spot where they actually had the meeting. So I feel I conjured up their ghosts a little bit. The next step was I took the play and I gave it to a couple of musicians who had played for Bernstein and musicians who had played for Karajan. And I asked them, take a red pen to it and just let me know if any of the language rings untrue. Okay? I didn't want them to work on the story because it's fiction. And it was just kind of my imagination of what these two men at this point in their life would have tried to communicate to one another. But that being said, they came back with some very, very good ideas and said, Bernstein would never have said this. Karajan would never have said that. And that helped me really mold the characters and color the characters. And I asked them a silly question. I said, you guys played with them. You worked with them day in, day out. I've seen a million hours of video of these guys. I've watched Bernstein since I was a little kid, watching the young people's concerts. Tell me something you know about them that the public doesn't. And I thought they would have to go home and think about it. They came up with it immediately. To a person, every one of them said, Lenny was hilarious. He had a marvelous sense of humor. And Karajan was hilarious. I never would have believed it. I watched 100 hours of video of Karajan. I've never seen the man crack a smile, let alone tell a joke. So to hear that he was a cut-up with a great sense of humor was really interesting. But you know what? That humanized both of them. Because I knew them as icons, as these revered figures I'd seen my entire life. But to hear from the players that these guys were pranksters and that they loved zinging one another, that really brought a different level to the story. So when I finished the play, my agent said, I want you to bring this to a guy named Gil Mehmert. And he brought it to him. I met with Gil, and if you remember that day in that little diner, he was supposed to meet for 15 minutes. I think we stayed 5 hours. Got in trouble with his wife. It was clear right away we had a simpatico about this story. And he came back to me and said, I have a crazy idea. And when he explained it to me, I had envisioned the play as a straight drama. He came back with this almost magical reality, impressionistic fantasy about the meeting. It had music in it, it had movement, and I said, oh my God, that was so foreign to what I had imagined. I was intrigued. So, at the first reading, I saw after 5 minutes that we were onto something very, very special. And he said to me, I'd really like you to trust me. I want to use 2 actors whom I know. Helen Schneider and Lucca Züchner. He didn't say, I want to use 2 women. He said, I want to use these 2 actors. I think they will be amazing in these roles. And I was, once again, I was in for a penny and for a pound. I wanted to see this now. And I went to Germany where they were rehearsing. And I sat there just mesmerized, just transported. The images that they created, the poetic, graceful beauty, just elevated my prose far higher than I ever expected it to go. They brought it to a completely different level. And these 2 actors, more than any other actors I had used, because we had done several sets of readings, all of them with male actors. These 2 actors cut to the heart. the emotional core of the story better than anyone else ever had. And we really made it deeply and intensely personal. And you'll see that in just a few minutes. And I work with a lot of directors. I've never worked with a visionary before, and Gil is truly a visionary. And I was honored to work with him. And it was quite an experience. He insisted on the actual stemware from the Züchner Hotel. That's what you see right here, that level of detail and stuff. And a precision that I was not familiar with previously. And it just turned into something really special, really magical. And why don't I hand you off to Gil now, and he can tell you a little more about his vision.
So I asked for, let's make the microphone work. And is it working now? No? Is it working? Yes? Great. Okay, I did my job. Okay, I'm very happy to be here. Enjoying this moment, staying in New York on a stage to quote a kind of Neil Armstrong. I think it's a little step for American theater people to do something here in this off-Broadway theater, but it's such a big step for German artists to be here and to do a production like this here in New York. It's really New York. It's like, of course, the sky, the unreachable theater sky, and so it's so great to be here. As Peter said, we brought this play to New York, and I think it's more than just doing this little play. I think it's a cooperation between Europe, Germany, and America. And I think it's also about to bring these values of America thinking and Europe thinking together in this play. And perhaps it fits to these times. As Peter already mentioned, I choose for two women. Of course, when I mentioned the actors, I knew that these are two women, but I also thought about these very special artists. And one first thought, of course, was I want to be aware of the comparison that an audience or critics have if you see somebody trying to pretend I am Leonard Bernstein and another man is trying to pretend I am the famous Karajan. So I want to go away from this, and so I thought these two guys, Karajan and Bernstein, world famous artists, were not really known for that they are tall, big men. They are not barking dogs. They are more like cats in an elegant way. They went to their very special life. And so I also thought perhaps it's interesting from a female perspective to characterize these very special artists. They are floating over everything, over the real world, sometimes over the reality, and the inner energy, this artistic energy, this sensitive way to talk and to think. I thought it's like perhaps a more artistic, a sensitive, a female perspective. And of course I had in my mind very, very soon these two women, which I thought this could work with them. Of course it was a kind of experiment, but like Peter said, I also was convinced in the first few minutes when we started to read this, and I forgot about is this a woman, is this a man? It's not important. These are artists. To pretend we are these two great conductors, and it's more important what happens with the soul and not how that they really look like, because you can always make a mistake. If they really look like Karajan and Bernstein, you say, oh, they're just looking like them, they just a copy. And if you make it the other way, to stay away with two male actors, then to say, oh, they're not looking like them. So it was not our first goal, it was our first goal to create characters that can pretend we are these two world famous conductors. So it's, I talked about America and Europe. Helen Schneider is somebody who worked in both worlds. She's now staying in Hamburg. She was in Berlin, she was in French and she lived, of course, in New York. I'm also happy to do this production with also American European team. I met so many great people here I can work with. It's a great team. I have also my own team, some people from America, my set designer Chris Barreca, my video designer Austin, Switzer, our associate Benny Pitt, and we did some productions together before in Europe. And it's great now to share this adventure with my American friends and being here in New York. So I started with Helen. Helen is famous when she came first to Germany for being a rock star with her band and her songs. And later she started a theater career, a musical theater career, and she's very famous for doing the first Norma Desmond. Lloyd Webber invited her to be Norma Desmond in Germany, and I had the opportunity to 15 years later, another production of Sunset Boulevard with Helen Schneider. And now I want to lead you to 3 themes we are doing now, without costumes, without masks. So to make you curious to come again how they look when they are in full shape. Helen and Lucca, perhaps you come to stage, please.
Hi.
These are my actors. And we start with a scene we will show you when it's very at the beginning of the show, and we have 2 moments of both characters. And it's a little bit that Karajan attacks and makes fun about Bernstein. So let's start with the scene.
At least I compose, Herbert. I create. This again. Yes, this again. I make something where there was nothing. What do? You read dots from a page and leave a stick in the air. There's nothing original about that. Nothing innovative. Creation, Herbert. That is God's greatest gift to the musician. You have never written anything in your entire life. You have never faced the terror of a blank sheet of manuscript paper full of laughing at you, mocking you, daring you to put something fresh, something new upon the void of nothingness. And in that regard, I hold the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel like anyone who's ever written a simple song of the great fun Karajan. The creative artist always trumps the interpretive artist. Are you quite finished? Yes. I think so. We've been down this road before. Oh, many, many times. Yes. But since it came up, seriously, now that we're getting on in years, haven't you ever had the desire to create your own music? Ever? Of course.
Well, yes, indeed. In fact, I'm glad you're here because I wanted to tell you that just recently I had a sort of epiphany.
Really?
Yes. After a great deal of soul searching, I decided that I have missed my true calling.
Tell me.
I should be writing music and comedy.
Oh, shut up.
Deep down, I learned was the desire to write insipid dance music.
Not funny.
You see little Slayer boys in their white uniforms dance around the city.
Still not funny.
Dancing taxi cab drivers, dancing cigarette girls, dancing street gangs. Oh yes, I must prefer that to conducting Mozart.
Oh, Herbert, you're missing the point. That's what is fun.
It's jazzy.
It's entertainment. But that doesn't mean it's all kitsch. That doesn't mean that some of it isn't as beautiful as any other.
Thank you. Of course, is also from Europe, from Germany, and this is also an aspect in this production that I choose for reality in the using the speech, because when Karajan is talking to the waiter, we also have a character with the waiter in the show, he's talking not in English, he's talking in his Austrian slang, and when we use this slang in the show, we translate it and have, like in a film, a video, that you can see the subtitles. And so we have Lucca with a special way to, the special way like Karajan spoke English, of course. So the next scene is also with music, and it's a fight. Again now, Helen Karajan strikes back. Okay.
Is it true that Callas publicly demanded to know if you were a homosexual?
What she said was, why are all the most handsome and talented men always homosexual?
Thank you for clarifying that. No, you could not take your eyes off of her. If the voice was less than perfect, who cares? The passion, the fire.
Oh, interesting. So less than perfect was acceptable to you. Oh, I'm astonished. But you two had a big falling out, right? Why?
Well, you see, her fee for each performance at Vienna Staatsoper was 70,000 shillings. It was in her contract. And then suddenly, and for no reason at all, she demanded 75,000.
Really? So what did you do?
I told her no, completely out of the question. And then she said, make it 72,000 or I shall never sing here again. And she never did sing there again.
Amazing. You stuck to your principles.
I did indeed.
Of course, your principles deprived Vienna of years of glorious performances by one of the greatest artists of all time.
It sent a message.
It certainly did. That Van Karajan was a cheap bastard.
Not at all. There must be order. Always. There must be rules. And frankly, I don't mind being a tyrant if it is in service to the muse.
Toscanini was a tyrant. You were just being petulant and cheap.
I was not being cheap. To me, money in itself has no attraction, but insofar as it allows me to achieve my artistic aims, money is important.
And you spent a lifetime doing the impossible with that money. I heard at Mascala they give you an unlimited budget too, and you still managed to exceed it. And 55 was the year that Berlin made you director for life.
Yes.
If you were director for life, how could they fire you?
They didn't fire me. They invoked some silly labor laws to avoid doing my conference. And yes, Toscanini was a tyrant, but that was what people loved about him. It was a matter of demanding the highest standards, a matter of principle.
Toscanini refused to play the fascist anthem before his concert, even when Mussolini himself was in the audience. Those, to me, are principles.
Those are political principles, not artistic.
But it said the message. A very clear social and moral message.
I suppose. But we were speaking artistically. And artistically, all the composers of his day detested his conducting. Rather hated his conducting as a premier of Bolero. Shostakovich hated his Leningrad Symphony. Even Verdi himself hated Toscanini's Falstaff. The only musician at the time that didn't hate Toscanini was Toscanini.
Thank you. As mentioned, Beethoven, because this is a composer that was very important for both of these conductors. And the last scene we doing now is of course, a lecture that is Karajan, the 10-year older of both, giving to, or trying to give to Bernstein.
Seriously, must every conversation end with a lecture? What's wrong with my father?
It would take hours to even scratch the surface.
Careful, Herbert. You are touching on the most sensitive area.
Your ego.
My mother! Are you kidding? I just gave you the greatest compliment, and you would tag of all things, my mother. Did you happen to hear my last model record?
I certainly hope so. Mahler's music is so full of dangers and traps, and one which many fall into is over-sensualizing until it becomes sort of kitsch. I really hate making generalizations, but your interpretation of Mahler is, shall we say, highly idiosyncratic. In my opinion, overly idiosyncratic. So much so as to make it practically unlistenable to all but the most musically adventurous audience. Do you follow?
Perfectly.
I once told a reporter that you are guilty of what I describe as falsifying documents. I do not understand why you ignore the composer's own instruction in favor of your own idea. What concerns me most is simply as correct a rendition of the notes as possible.
Then to my mind, you wish to be a photographer rather than a painter. You wish to capture the essence rather than create something fresh, something new.
You are missing my point. We are so blessed today because for centuries, music was something only for those who had money. So we have a sacred duty to make music in such a way that we can bring pleasure to as many people as possible. It is not about you or I.
And to think they call you elitist.
I am not elitist, I am super elitist. And I'm immensely proud.
But Herbert, you have said over and over that you need to manipulate the music, you need to mold the music, you need to bend it to your will to create the beautiful fun Karajan sound. I, on the other hand, have no desire to make any orchestra produce a Bernstein sound.
So you say, but yet in your manner, you insist upon the grandest and loudest highs and the tiniest, quietest lows. You saturate every performance with such lurching extremes, none of which is specifically called for in the score. Shall I go on?
Yes, please. You seem to know me better than I know myself.
Thank you. Okay.